What a great way to transition to one of our favorite sessions in Meridian, the Community Town Hall. So I will now hand it over to my amazing co-host, Justin, to introduce us and get us ready for that discussion.
Thanks so much, Lisa. It's a pleasure to be here. Every time the Roots are playing, at the end, I actually find myself applauding here alone. But I guess together, right? Virtually together. I don't know if anybody else does. It's really a privilege to have them playing. And it's really been a great time for everyone to come together. On the dev track, we've had a lot of great discussions, a lot of great participation, and a lot of great questions. And now, everyone at Meridian, you have an opportunity to ask questions of some of SDF's leaders. I mean, in the spirit of sort of the open source values and SDF's commitment to transparency, we're hosting this town hall. And really, anything's fair game. There's a QA button on the right, which you can use to submit questions. And we'll get to as many as we can in the time that we have. With me today are Danelle Dixon, our CEO and Executive Director. Hi, Danelle.
Hi.
And Jed McCaleb, Chief Architect and Founder at Stellar Development Foundation. Hi, Jed.
Hi, everyone.
So I guess the first question is just, Jed, Danelle, how are you enjoying Meridian so far?
I think it's great. Yeah, it's been going really well. I mean, it's unfortunate it's not in person, but all things considered, I think it's been pretty exciting and a lot of stuff to learn.
Yeah, I love the feedback. We've gotten such great feedback on it. Folks who put this together did such an amazing job with the panelists and all the speakers. They're phenomenal. And then just like the engagement with the attendees, so important and really gets to the open source part of how we want to operate. So I'm thrilled about how this has gone.
Great. Have you had any sessions that have really stood out for you, ones that you enjoyed that you kind of want to talk about for a minute? Jed?
Let's see. I mean, well, we had a good discussion where it was just me and a few other people from the community, which was pretty interesting. It was good to kind of give answer questions directly from people. It was small, but it was interesting and cool. Yeah.
Danelle, any standout sessions for you?
Yeah, I'm not going to fall prey to that, Justin. They were all amazing. So I'm not going to pick on anyone. We did do a small session too with the community. And that was really fun just to talk. Like it was just like sitting there talking to friends. So I love that. But, you know, it's been, I mean, the whole thing, like having the Roots is, and those interstitials has just been kind of calming throughout the whole thing. So it's been great.
Great. Well, questions are coming in now, and this is also obviously an opportunity to interact with the community and with everyone watching. First question is just about engagements. It's from Hans. What can I do for Stellar? I'd love to be a part of the ecosystem and contribute from my end here. What can Hans do?
Wow, it's a great question. I think, Hans, like you can, first of all, like getting the word out about what Stellar can do and what all these awesome companies that are building on Stellar are doing is pretty phenomenal and a great way to do it. You're technical, obviously, we would love for you to develop and to be creative and innovative for your area on Stellar and to help us to make the platform and the network even better than it is. There are so many ways to just get involved in the community and get involved in the discussions. And I think that whatever your level and your ability to be able to do that is, we just really welcome it.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, I mean, obviously we don't know what you're capable of, but just, you know, there's just a lot of education that needs to happen about Stellar, especially in the crypto world. I mean, it's not really, people don't really understand what Stellar is and how it's different from other things. And so like being able to explain that to people and being able to like tell the story of what Stellar is I think super important, and why it's different from these other protocols out there, I think would go a long way. So
great. And now there are a couple of questions, one for each of you, sort of about how things are different now than when you started. So first, Jed, what are your thoughts on how the community and the ecosystem have grown and changed since you first started Stellar?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously changed quite a lot, right? So I mean, it's been over 6 years now. Yeah, I mean, I think it's matured a lot. There's a lot of people like actually like building real things on the network now. Like crypto in general has matured a lot. So all that's been really encouraging to see. And there's more anchors in the network now. So it's like possible to do other things besides just build anchors and wallets and stuff. So there's other things that you can do now with Stellar, which is exciting. And there's just a much larger, more vibrant community now than in the beginning. And so it's just been great to watch the whole thing unfold. So.
Danelle, for you, is there anything that surprised you since you joined the blockchain world and the Stellar community?
Oh, I think the thing about the blockchain world that I've been in technology for a really long time. I think the one thing is the blockchain world is they're very active and very excitable and very excited, and sometimes in a great way and sometimes in a negative way. So that sort of surprised me a little bit to see it be even more activity and more excitement and sometimes more criticality. Um, I'll say that I think I joined SDF and Stellar at just kind of like the perfect time because Jed and others had been spending so many years like laying this amazing foundation. And then when I came in, we were just about ready to move everything forward. And so if you just even look at the difference in the network from May of 2019 when I started to today, it's just remarkable. And I'd like to take credit for like me being the one to have done that, but it's not. It's actually the community and all the people that built on it and the foundation that was laid during that time, during the prior before I got there. And so we've just been able to really build on it. And I can't like express how exciting it is to see the use cases like operational as if it's just like normal operating procedures. It's not like, oh, wow, let's get excited about this transaction. They just happen and they're working and it's wonderful to see. So I think that so much work has been done in years past. And then this last 18 months, it's just exploded. So it's been awesome.
Great. I have some questions about regions. I know that in your opening speech, Danelle, you sort of highlighted Africa and you highlighted Latin America. And now I've got one person sort of asking what's in store for Europe and what's in store for Asia. Are there projects happening in those continents that we're excited about, that you're excited about?
Yeah, well, I mean, every region is different. And that's the thing that's really important is you have to think about what's necessary in those regions and what the needs are. And we're already seeing, obviously, we have Tempo, we have a lot of other projects that are starting to build in Europe. And so I think we're going to see a lot more anchors in the next 6 to 8 months, even in the European market. And I think that's going to be able to allow not just remittances from a consumer standpoint, but businesses. So we're going to see a lot of business activity from there. And Asia is just an area that is so important because the needs in Asia are diverse, and yet there are many, and that there's already such wide acceptance of digital assets. And so what we're going to see some also anchors. When again, like the anchor is like that foundational layer that you need to put to make everything sort of work together. And so we're going to see some of those anchors coming on in the first quarter, and I think that's going to be really helpful for us to really create Asia. I mean, we already do have some really strong partnerships there, but we're going to see even more, I think.
Great. A follow-up question to that, and I really like the way that this one's phrased, so I'm going to read it exactly. It's from Mariano. It says, I still remember my welcome email 6 years later, seeing how it has improved from the SDF perspective. Apart from anchors, what services would you like to see run on Stellar? Onward. That's the end of the quote. It ends with onward, which I like.
Let's see. Yeah, obviously anchors are like the fundamental thing. Like those have to be there kind of before you do much else on Stellar. So like assuming those are in place, then there's just a range of things that I think can start to be developed, you know, all the ways to things like that DStock are doing, where it's just like random equities on Stellar, to like things that like Cowrie's doing, where it's just moving money cross border for these like businesses. One thing that it would be cool to see is like in kind of gaming, you know, for instance, like a lot of these game companies want to receive like small amounts of money all around the world, and like it would be cool to see some sort of application that addresses that, or like, you know, that use case being served on Stellar. But you know, there's just kind of like anywhere payments are done, you know, once you have anchors in place, like there could be a Stellar use case built on it. So, yeah.
Danelle, any other use cases other than anchors, which obviously are foundational, that you see coming down the pipeline that you're excited about?
Well, I think that, you know, we're going to see more and more of just the cross-border payments, and I think payments for businesses because the high cost corridors. I think we're going to see that. We've focused on like what use cases do we think are going to be like the top use cases in 2021, and not meaning like the most important, just the ones that we're going to see most often. And I think we're going to see consumer to consumer cross-border payments because of the high friction markets for remittances. And then I think we're going to see more access to financial services, like the, you know, savings accounts and investing in securities like DStock and like what others are offering. So I think that we're going to see more of that. And what Jed just mentioned in terms of gaming, it's sort of one of those when I was in the browser world, like one of the things I always wanted to see were these micropayments being so simple. We see some of this happening with Satoshi Pay, but we see some of this happening with others. We saw some in the hackathon that folks talked about, like, and built applications around that. And I think anything that can allow microtransactions with ease, at such, like, given that the fact that it's so cheap to be able to do those on Stellar, I just feel like that solves a huge need. So I think that's going to come, and we're going to see a lot more of that as well. And that's not going to be like this amazingly unique and creative thing. It's actually solving a real problem that everywhere in the world we have. Like, so I love that use case, because it's just something that it's something on the content side of the web that is like a really important thing to be able to get right to.
Great. And I want to say that specific to gaming, tomorrow in the Tech Track, we do have a session talking about using Stellar and integrating Stellar into gaming platforms, which will be super excited. It's actually one of the sessions that the community, the ecosystem, voted on. We gave people an opportunity to sort of choose a session, 2 sessions to add to Meridian, and that was one of the most popular ones. So I feel like there are people starting to think about this. It feels exciting and interesting to sort of see Stellar in a different light, or applied to a slightly different use case. I have several questions here about USDC. I guess, Mike, recently we announced that USDC is going to be issuing on Stellar. And I guess, can one of you just tell me a little bit about what that means and about sort of the opportunities that that opens up for developers on Stellar, or for Stellar in general?
Yeah, Danelle, I think you've been closer to this, so.
Yeah, I mean, I think that USDC, I think we're going to see them live in the first quarter, and I think the first month of the first quarter. And what I think that that offers is just the real opportunity for us to see a really strong and stable asset that can be utilized for all of these things we just talked about. So you can leverage it to be able to go into your application, so that Vibrant, for example, can leverage it to be able to have this like USD, it's backed the USD asset that's actually, that can be tradable and usable. But there's so many, like, I can't say the use cases that it can be used for, because there are so many, and it's just dependent on what's being built around it. But it will just be available like any other asset. It's really, really important to have a strong USD token. And for us, that was one of the big things we wanted to bring. We already had several that were in the market, but having one that has the brand that USDC has, it's going to be, I think it's going to open up even more opportunities for that. They also have a lot of tools that are available to developers to access their APIs in a very simple way. And so I think that that makes it so ease of use is going to be something that they focus on from their own development standpoint. So there's going to be a model there that we can leverage for other anchors as well.
Great. I have a question from Afo Lobby, which is, what is your view of having P2P lending on Stellar? Like, this is sort of a use case that I know that has come up before, people have talked about. Does it seem like there's a sort of ability to take Stellar and build P2P lending apps or services on top of it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, particularly like a lot of P2P lending, at least, if you look at like kind of what Kiva has done, a lot of it is cross-border, right? So like, there's people funding people like in, some part of the world where they don't live, right? And so anything done like that would be like much easier on Stellar. But in general, I think it's a good use case, because you're collecting money from lots of people that you're just giving to one person. That person is probably paying back like small amounts over time, and so like all of that is like easierly to track and facilitate on Stellar. So I think it's a great use of the technology. So I'd be excited to see someone build something like that for sure.
Yeah, and I think, wasn't there something in the hackathon that actually, it wasn't so much the lending model, but the peer-to-peer working together to help save? So I feel like there's already ideas around that. And again, it's based on your regional markets and like what is the need there. But definitely it's something that can be done and should be done.
I got one here from Jeremy. It says, Tyler just had a great talk on the TSS concept, which is Turing Signing Service. It's an idea that they're experimenting with, right, to create smart contracts and then settle them on Stellar. Or they're not exactly smart contracts if you saw the talk, but kind of in the same ballpark. How do you feel about it as a feature on Stellar, or that builds on Stellar, and the use cases it could solve for?
Yeah, so I think we need something along these lines on Stellar. I'm not exactly sure what the exact shape of that should be, but we certainly need a way to enable the things that people are looking for when they want smart contracts. you know, you could do lots of things on Stellar, but inevitably there's like these cases where you kind of need a handle in kind of a bespoke way. And so something like that, I think it will make a lot of sense and kind of be able to increase what you can do on the network. So we're like actively trying to figure what that is out right now. So.
And I think that we also have talked about it a little bit. I mean, we're early stage of this, obviously, but like for DEX liquidity issues, and is there something that can be used with TSS for that? So obviously, like DEX liquidity is something that we care about and we're focused on. So if this is another thing that can help solve that, we would love to be able to look at that.
Right.
That actually leads right into another question that I have here, which is what are the challenges that you see for Stellar in 2021?
Well, I'll start because that's an easy one because I just said that. The DEX liquidity is something that we want to be able to take that challenge on more directly. And it's part of our strategy for 2021. I think what we did our strategy work and started in September, and everyone in the organization participated in like how we pulled this together. And we did some teams and Tiger teams around this. And one of it was on DEX liquidity. Another of it was on like, what are the risks to the network? And so, like these risks that are existential that are out there, and we have to think about that. So it caused us to be more mindful and to think about do we need to put a lot more testing and a lot more mechanisms in for that at the outset so that we can make sure that we're protecting against any kinds of security flaws or bugs that come into it, just in any software development. So I think that the DEX liquidity one is the largest risk that we saw that we need to be able to solve and that we're going to focus on for 2021. Yeah.
I mean, for me, it's kind of the same thing that it's always been. It's just how do you get this network started, right? I mean, this is the whole problem that crypto at large has, is that these things really depend on lots of people kind of coming together at the same time. And so our challenge has always been is like, how do we get enough people to the table at once to make this network useful? And I think we have a pretty good solution with Vibrant and a couple other efforts. But so yeah, just the kind of the risk or the challenge there is just like, will this actually work? And like, how do you make this all happen at one time? So, yeah.
Got a question here from Lisa, which is, compliance costs are the barrier for job creation efforts in open source platforms. What is SDF doing to help? I guess more generally, compliance, a lot of the companies that build on Stellar, they have to worry about compliance. Is there any strategy that we have in place or that SDF plans to have in place to sort of help companies deal with becoming compliant with the challenges involved?
Well, I think that, the network itself has the compliance tools in it. I think that the beautiful thing about using financial systems financial institutions that already exist is most of them are compliant with whatever regulatory body they need to be compliant with in their region. Stellar allows them to be able to set it up and set the infrastructure for themselves up in a way that makes the most sense from a KYC standpoint, AML standpoint. They can use the tools when they feel like they need to use the tools from that standpoint. So I'm not sure, like from an open source project standpoint, we focus on what are the, even if you think about what we're doing with Vibrant, and when Vibrant is heavily reliant on the anchors that it's working with to make sure that they're compliant in their region, that they're doing the work that they have, and that they have the customer relationships. So we're constantly trying to improve like the flow of information in the Stellar ecosystem proposals, making sure that we're actually responding to the needs of these applications in the community with respect to that. So we're always going to be looking at it from a code-based standpoint and like, how can we make it simpler and easier, or what proposals can we put together to do that? And then obviously we spend a lot of time policy making and working with regulators and working with bodies all over the world to help to make it so that people feel that they can trust Stellar and blockchain generally.
And I don't know if you want to touch this, but there is a question about 2021 and the changing regulatory landscape as a result of the election. What changes do you see coming forward in 2021? What new challenges dealing with regulators do you foresee?
So it's funny, we keep getting this question asked, and I think the answer that the most honest answer I can give is they're in the US, like we're not just US focused, but that definitely the US election is what this is targeted on. There hasn't been a big change in the shift in the policymaking branch. So if you think about how the House and the Senate have shaken out, like there hasn't been a big shift in that. We have our challenges with respect to making sure that we do our part to educate and provide as much information as we can to all the participants and all the constituents in that branch of government to make sure that they feel comfortable with blockchain and with Stellar in particular, and with decentralized networks, because that's a big focal point for them. A lot of them want it to be more centralized, not surprisingly, because that offers more control. So we have our work cut out for us there, but that's not different than 2020. That was just there. And then from the other branch of government, which is the presidency and like the administrative body there, I feel like what we saw in the Obama administration was a really interesting focus on technology and new technologies. They actually had an office that was dedicated to this. We didn't see as much of that under Trump, but we also didn't see any harm coming to the blockchain space under the Trump administration. So I do feel like there's an opportunity to engage in these new technologies and to get that to get the Biden administration to be really focused on them. And we're going to do our part to do that. But that doesn't change that we still have the rest of the world that we need to focus on, because the US is important and we need to, I think, create some regulatory stability in the US. But our focal point is not the US. Our focal point is the global market. And we'd like to see, this sort of nice regulatory engagement happen all over the world.
Jed, I have a couple questions, I think, for you that are about sort of technological stuff. What connection do you see between Stellar and Ethereum? And related, how do you feel about DeFi?
Let's see. Well, I mean, there's no direct connection between Stellar and Ethereum. I mean, are they meaning how these things will work together or how they compare against each other?
I think it's a question about how they might interact or interoperate or live side by side in the future.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, they're trying to solve very different problems. I mean, there's, blockchain, all these different projects kind of get lumped together, but they're really solving very different niches and issues in the world. So, Ethereum is just this very generic protocol that can kind of do any kind of computation in this decentralized way, which is great. But it also has the downsides that any computation that it does do is going to be kind of like slow and inefficient. Whereas like Stellar is like tailor purpose to do this one particular thing. So it does it really well and efficiently and quickly, namely like store representations of other kinds of value, like store different kinds of like fiat tokens or crypto tokens or whatever. And it's built to do that. So that's going to be very effective and good. But if you need to do more complex stuff, like make a distributed prediction market or something like that, like Stellar's not your tool, whereas Ethereum probably is. So they just serve different purposes in the world. So I imagine they'll continue to kind of live side by side and it'll be fine. As far as DeFi, that's just also just like this broad category. I'm not sure what falls into that and what doesn't. I mean, I think the craze that's kind of going on now in Ethereum land. I mean, a lot of it I'm worried is going to blow up at some point. But some of it is legitimate and some of it like makes a lot of sense. And like, those kind of things. We hope to like the things that make sense. We hope to like kind of like port over to the Stellar side of the world. This is kind of going back to the Turing complete scripting service thing. Like a lot of the impetus for doing that is to like provide some of these DeFi like services that people want and are asking for. So I think like most things in crypto, there's like good things and bad things in it, and nonsense and stuff that makes sense. And we just kind of have to like sort through and find the things that actually work and are good for people.
So when the ecosystem has needs, problems that they want solved, what's the best way for them to convey those needs to the SDF and to the rest of the ecosystem as a whole? Like how can someone who has an issue that they want to sort of talk about, how can they bring it forward?
Yeah, well, they should email Justin.
Same thing. Justin's our guy.
You can email me at justin@stellar.org. Actually, you really can. Like it is true that not only actually everyone here, everyone at Meridian, all very accessible, and we actually do listen and we actually do want feedback. Oftentimes when we want feedback, it's not as easy to get it as you would think, right? Like, please tell us what you're thinking at all times, because yeah, I mean, in a way, the people that use Stellar, these are the people with the most insight into what it needs to do, what it's not doing. Feedback, great.
Yeah. I mean, other ways are like, there's a dev mailing list. There's like an open Keybase channel that we have that's fairly active that you can post in. There's Reddit. There's lots of like avenues for you to like kind of get feedback from us and other people in the community and kind of like let us know what you're thinking. So those three are all like great ways to kind of start to build understanding of what you need. So.
And the other, when Justin said that it's sometimes hard for us to get feedback when we want it, we do put out proposals, and we don't put them out just because we think we're 100% right all the time. We actually do want feedback. And sometimes when we put them out, we don't get as much feedback as we would like to, or as we think we might. So I think just be very active, and we want to know. We're not going to always agree with you, and you might not always agree with us, but we're going to try our best to be able to get that feedback, understand it, and then try to do the right thing as a result.
Question from 2. Ripple is talking about moving their headquarters abroad due to uncertainty and regulation. Would SDF consider the same move if the US is not creating a level playing field?
So I'll start, and I'll say that I don't know why we would need to move our operations abroad. I feel like we're a Delaware corporation. We're organized under the laws of Delaware. We actually have found it fine for us to be here. I think the most important thing for us to do, again, focused on the decentralized nature of the network, is to get everyone comfortable with decentralization versus centralized authority, which frankly shouldn't be that hard, given that we're actually able to have this communication right now because we're working on a decentralized network out there in terms of the internet. So I feel like I don't see the justification for that in the work that we do. And now that doesn't mean we prioritize the US over any other market, but that doesn't feel like that we have a strong need. I don't know, Jed, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, that's right. I just feel like the things that Stellar does are it was just hard to imagine any kind of U.S. regulation that would make that impossible to do in the U.S. I mean, we're never in the flow of funds or anything like that. Like, there's just no, I don't know. Things would have to change pretty drastically before we would have to take such a step, I think. So.
Great. A couple of questions here that sort of relate to the upcoming roadmap. The first is about Vibrant. When do you anticipate this is from Jerome. When do you anticipate the Vibrant app completing the beta phase and going live? Are there any regulatory hurdles impeding progress?
Yes, I forget what the current timeline is for it going out of beta. I mean, it's live right now. It's just in beta, so everyone can use it if they want to check it out. But really, the next big milestone for us is getting it to a certain level of polish, and then we're going to do a lot of marketing in Argentina to like really get the word out and start to build the users. And I think, if I recall correctly, that should be end of Q1. I think is what we're pushing for. So.
Yeah, I think so. And from a regulatory standpoint, we don't have regulatory hurdles in the app. There's nothing that the app itself has to be. Again, we rely on the anchors in the network. So the anchors have done a great job in terms of getting their regulatory hurdles all set up and organized around, which I think is, again, how the network should operate.
Now, there's also a question about something that was on a past roadmap, which was a project called Starlight. And the question is basically, what happened to Starlight? Is it still something that we're working on?
Yeah, we're still thinking about it. It's kind of morphed into this SideNet idea that we've been spending some time on. Yeah, it's one of these things that we need to like focus on more. And it actually the problem is like once you start thinking about it, like it pulls in a lot of things. Like even this Turing complete signing server thing, it probably has some bearing on how we would build this SideNet thing or Starlight.
Can you tell us just a little bit about what it means, like what Starlight is or was, or what SideNet is or was, what it does, what it's trying to solve for, and what we're planning to do with it?
Yeah, so the basic idea is that at some point, if you want Stellar to be this kind of global network, you start reaching these kind of like scalability bottlenecks. Because it is this public network where everyone has to see every transaction, and that just won't scale to the whole world. So you need to do something like this payment channel concept that they have in Bitcoin, which is like Lightning, where that or something equivalent to that, where basically you can move a lot of the transactions off of the public chain and only resettle back there periodically, right? And so Starlight was a payment channel version of that, and then we realized that we can kind of do something a little more generic, and that's what SideNet is. It's kind of like it's a superset of what Starlight would be, and it allows you to do a few other things, and basically it would also subsume this Turing complete signing service thing likely. So, but the essential idea is you want to be able to provide something more scalability and also more privacy for people and more bespoke operations that you can't do in the normal network. So like being able to combine kind of all three of those things and the DEX stuff, so all four of those things, it's just taking a lot of like it's taking a lot of time to get it right. We want to just make sure the system is done right rather than just like kludge on the first thing that we kind of come to. So it's taking longer than we had hoped.
But it is going to be a focus of ours for 2021 to be working on it throughout 2021, targeting like a 2022 availability, because we're looking at use cases in the end of 2021 and beginning of 2022 that would have it. So something that's important. But it has taken on sort of a life of its own in terms of the different pieces that we think we can solve with it. So.
Right.
Question from Jeremy, Protocol 15 updates, claimable balances and sponsored reserves. They seem to be very important to the network. Was there an upcoming project that this was prioritized for?
You mean, was there a reason that we put these in?
Yeah.
They were. A lot of these things are driven by what people need to make Stellar useful in the real world. So a lot of it's driven by Vibrant and other projects out there. They're like, if we had this feature, it would make our lives like a million times easier, that kind of thing. And so that's kind of what's driving those things. I mean, both of those just make it way easier to like have actual real world Stellar services. So.
Question for you, Danelle. How has SDF grown since you started your tenure, and how many people work at SDF now?
So when I started on my first day, we had 12, I think, or maybe 15 people that worked at SDF. And Jed always wanted to hire more and to bring in more talent. And part of my job was to be able to help to focus in on like, what do we need? And like, how do we go ahead and start the hiring? So that was in May of 2019. And today we're just at 80, I think, in terms of our full-time employees. And some of them are contractors because they're not in the United States. And which is just remarkable growth. We've grown, I think we've hired like 35 folks over the COVID period. So from February of this year through now. And so there's just been a tremendous amount of growth, real focus on making sure that everyone aligns with our values, spending a lot of time on video over the last 9 months to be like meeting people and to having them meet with like more of our internal employees as they're going through the process, just because of the need to the inability to meet people in person. So there's a tremendous amount of growth in terms of our talent, which is our most important asset. And then if we think about just like how we've scaled and what we've thought about internally, like we have our roadmap is a lot about we have our same pillars that we created in 2019 around, the blockchain people know and trust, which has a lot to do with policy and marketing. And then we also have the part about it, which is usability and scalability of Stellar. And that is a lot about our technology, but also about the ecosystem and being responsive to that. And then if you think about the other parts of our network that we need to really focus on is the use cases. And so developing like the assets internally, not just in terms of the Vibrant itself, which is one of the use cases that we build, but making sure that the network actually responds to those use cases, and then having the enterprise fund so that we can invest. So all of those changes happened in 2020. So it's been a remarkable transition from like even just where we were in the end of 2019 to where we are today. So it's been amazing and like sometimes overwhelming to think about how much we've grown.
And is there going to be more clarity or just somewhere that people can sort of understand or read about or hear about our SDF's 2021 objectives?
Yeah, so tomorrow I'll give a talk on it. That'll be part of the discussion that we have at the closing, but we will publish this year. We didn't do it last year and I'm not exactly sure why, but we're going to publish this year more of like our roadmap, not just from a technical roadmap standpoint, but really focused in, we have our strategy for 2021 already that we've put together, and there's some refinements here and there, but we'll publish that so that everyone can look at it, hopefully think it's amazing, or tell us how wrong we are.
And I guess I have a question here from Raymond that feels even more forward-looking than that. Where do you see Stellar in 5 years?
So yeah, for me, like I think in 5 years' time, I would really like to see it used in some region of the world pretty widely. So, hopefully we establish this foothold in Latin America, and then it's used there for like, payments, remittances, all kinds of things. And building this thing to our ultimate vision is going to take quite a long time. But I really think that we have enough in place now. So we're in 5 years' time, we'll be used in some region, whether it's Southeast Asia or Africa or Latin America or a combination of these things where, a good number of people are actually using this day to day, and it's actually like improving people's lives. I mean, that's what we're aiming for here. So.
And I think that what we talk about internally, at least part of our strategy, again, our strategy work is to really focus on it being the global payment standard. And really what that means is it's just interoperable. It makes it so that we can interoperate and there's just so much more usage and opportunity because of that. So if you think about how we can enhance that financial structure that's there, but then also interoperate with all the new things that are coming on, that's sort of our goal. And 5 years out, we would love to see that be the standard.
Final very important question from Sam. Any chance of a Stellar store? They would, to buy shirts and mugs, Stellar coffee. The mug that is on that desk where Jed is sitting right now has been a really popular feature. Are we thinking of pivoting to be a creator and seller of physical goods?
We haven't actually thought about using that as our revenue model and shifting over there. And I'm just going to say again that I still don't have my socks and I still don't have any of the swag that all of you out there have. So I don't know, Jed, if you got it, but somehow it missed my doorstep.
Not yet, not yet.
Well, I think that's important, right? It's important. That's who, it's servant leadership, right? It's who it's really for. It's for the people out there. They need the socks. You guys will get the socks very, very last. How does that sound?
That sounds great.
It sounds just fine. And hopefully we will have an opportunity to be able to provide even more and more swag over the years. So we'll focus on that, but probably not a store.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, everyone, for your questions. And thanks so much, Danelle and Jed, for doing this. It's really great just to have an opportunity to sort of hear from and interact directly with the community. And it is really amazing that you're all here as part of Meridian. We just couldn't do this without you. In fact, there is no Stellar without you out there in the world. And that's it for the main session today at Meridian. But there is still one more session at 6 p.m. Pacific. Christine Tu, Director of Business Development at the SDF, and Joe Tussin, CEO and founder of Change, are going to talk about what it takes to build and scale a remittance business on Stellar. Now, tomorrow, we've also got another day of programming kicking off at 8 a.m. With a conversation with Danelle and Reid Hoffman, co-founder of LinkedIn and partner at Greylock, about building network effects, which is something that Jed mentioned as being super critical. Makes a lot of sense. So trust me, you don't want to miss that. And thanks so much to everyone for being a part of Meridian today. Wherever you are in the world, have a good morning or a great afternoon or a decent evening, and I will see you soon.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Justin. Thanks, everyone.